May 8, 1945. The war in Europe is over. Germany has surrendered. Flags are going up across London, Paris, New York. The church bells are ringing. People are weeping in the streets. A world that spent 6 years drowning in blood is finally breathing again. And General George S. Patton, the most feared military commander alive, is furious. Not relieved, not celebrating, furious. He picks up a pen. He writes a telegram. He addresses it personally to Supreme Allied Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower, his boss, his oldest friend, the most powerful military officer in the world. The telegram asks one question that if answered yes, would have changed the entire second half of the 20th century. It asks for permission to start World War III. Eisenhower reads it. He picks up a pen. He writes back 2 words. This is what those 2 words were, and this is what Patton was willing to die for, and what Eisenhower was willing to destroy him over. If stories like this matter to you, the hidden moments that almost changed the entire world, subscribe now, because the deeper this story goes, the harder it becomes to forget. To understand why Patton sent that telegram, you have to understand where he was standing in May of 1945. He was standing at the edge of the greatest military victory in human history. And he believed with every bone in his body that America was about to throw it away. His name was General George Smith Patton, Jr., 3rd Army Commander, 60 years old, 6'1", wore 2 ivory-handled revolvers on his belt, even in peacetime, not for decoration, but because he genuinely believed he might need them at any moment. He had driven his 3rd Army farther, faster, and through more enemy resistance than any armored force in history. 600 miles in under a year, 11 countries, hundreds of thousands of German soldiers taken prisoner or destroyed. His men called him Old Blood and Guts. The Germans called him something else. They called him the one American commander they were actually afraid of. And in May of 1945, Patton's army was sitting 90 miles from Moscow. Not 90 miles from Moscow, 90 miles from the Soviet front lines, which in Patton's mind was the same thing, because Patton had been watching the Soviets all year. While the world celebrated VE Day, Patton was reading intelligence reports. He was looking at Soviet troop movements, supply lines, territorial acquisitions. He was watching Joseph Stalin methodically absorb Eastern Europe, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Hungary, like a man eating a meal he'd been waiting to eat. And Patton reached a conclusion that made his closest officers go pale when he said it out loud. He concluded that the real war hadn't ended. It had just changed enemies. Patton saw something in 1945 that terrified him more than Nazi Germany ever did. If you're already realizing this isn't the World War II story you expected, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me.
Let's go back 18 months to September 1944. The war in Europe is going well, better than anyone expected. Germany is cracking. Allied forces are pushing east, and the Soviets are pushing west. The plan, agreed at the Tehran Conference, is that Germany will be carved into 4 occupation zones after the war: American, British, French, and Soviet. Berlin itself will be divided. Patton hates this plan. He says so loudly, repeatedly, and to anyone who will listen. He tells his staff, "We're going to regret this. The moment we stop, they won't." He's talking about the Soviets. By early 1945, Patton has watched Soviet forces advance with a speed and brutality that mirrors his own, but without any of the restrictions American commanders operate under. No press scrutiny, no political oversight, no rules of engagement. The Soviets take what they take and they keep it. In March of 1945, Patton writes in his private diary, "We have defeated the wrong enemy." 5 words, written in pencil in a leather-bound journal he keeps locked in his field desk. His staff has read it. His intelligence officer has read it. Nobody challenges him on it because nobody can argue with the math he's doing in his head. His math? America has the largest, most battle-hardened, best-supplied army in the world sitting on Soviet-controlled territory. The Soviets, for all their ferocity, have taken catastrophic losses, an estimated 8 million soldiers dead, millions more wounded. Their supply lines are stretched, their men are exhausted. Patton's math says if America was ever going to stop Soviet expansion, really stop it, this is the moment. It will never be this easy again. And in May of 1945, as Europe celebrates, Patton sits down and writes the most dangerous telegram of the 20th century. If you've never heard this story, you're about to understand why it was buried for decades. Hit subscribe. We cover the WWII history they don't put in textbooks.
The telegram isn't his first attempt. That's the part history doesn't tell you. Patton has been making this argument through proper channels, in meetings, in memos, in dinner conversations with senior officers for months, and he keeps getting the same answer. No. Diplomatically worded, carefully phrased, but always the same answer. The political situation is too delicate. The American public won't support another war. The alliance with Stalin must be preserved. Roosevelt made promises. Now Truman has inherited those promises. Patton listens to these answers with increasing impatience. His intelligence officer, Colonel Oscar Koch, is one of the few people Patton fully trusts. Koch is meticulous, cautious, precise, everything Patton is not. And even Koch has started saying, quietly in private, "General, I think you're right, but I don't think anyone is going to listen." "Then I'll make them listen," Patton says. In June 1945, Patton is appointed military governor of Bavaria, the American-occupied zone of southern Germany. It is supposed to be an administrative role, civilian reconstruction, refugee management, logistics. For Patton, it is unbearable. He is a combat commander. He has spent his entire career preparing for exactly the kind of war he just finished, and now they want him to sit behind a desk and approve building permits? He writes to his wife Beatrice, "I feel like a horse being put out to pasture while the barn is still on fire." He makes enemies in his new role almost immediately. He publicly questions the denazification process, arguing that too many experienced German administrators are being removed, leaving a vacuum that will be filled by chaos or communists. The press catches wind of it. The headlines are brutal. "Patton defends Nazis," screams one front page. He doesn't mean what they say he means, but he said it carelessly, arrogantly, without thinking how it would sound. Eisenhower is furious. He calls Patton to his headquarters in Frankfurt. The meeting is tense. Eisenhower tells him to be careful, to think before he speaks, to remember that he is a military officer, not a politician. Patton walks out of that meeting more convinced than ever that the people making decisions don't understand what's coming. 2 weeks later, he sends the telegram. Imagine watching disaster coming and realizing nobody powerful is willing to stop it. If that thought hits you, leave a comment. I genuinely want to know whose side you're on.
The telegram is 3 pages long in draft. His aide, Captain Richard Jensen, watches him write it, watches him cross things out, rewrite, cross out again. Patton is normally fast, decisive, blunt, impatient with doubt. Tonight he is slow. He knows exactly what he is doing. "Sir," Jensen says at one point, "do you want me to step outside?" Patton looks up. "No," he says, "stay. If I'm going to hang for this, someone should be a witness." He laughs when he says it, but Jensen does not laugh. The final version of the telegram is not 3 pages. It is 14 lines. Patton has stripped it to its bones, the way he always strips everything. No decoration, no justification, no political language. It opens with a situation assessment. Soviet forces have consolidated control of all agreed occupation zones and are showing no signs of limiting further expansion. 3 documented border violations in the American zone in the past 30 days. Polish resistance fighters who fought alongside Allied forces are being executed by Soviet units. Civilian populations in Soviet-controlled areas are being subjected to systematic displacement. Then the argument. American forces currently hold tactical superiority in personnel, armor, air support, and supply. This superiority is temporary. Soviet industrial capacity and manpower will close the gap within 2 to 3 years. The window for decisive action is now, not later. Then the request. Request authorization to advance Third Army eastward and engage Soviet forces at the current line of contact with the objective of forcing Soviet withdrawal from illegally occupied territories. He signs it with his full name and rank. George S. Patton, General, United States Army, Third Army Commander. He hands it to Jensen. "Sir, this will end your career." Patton nods slowly. "Probably," he says. "Send it anyway." Leave a comment right now. Do you think Patton was right? Was he a visionary or a danger? The comments below this video are a war zone. We'll pin the best ones. Patton knew this telegram could destroy his career, and he sent it anyway. If this story is affecting you more than expected, subscribe and share. It helps these forgotten stories survive.
The telegram arrives at Eisenhower's headquarters at 11:14 in the morning. His chief of staff, General Walter Bedell Smith, known universally as Beetle, reads it first. Then he walks it directly into Eisenhower's office and puts it on the desk without saying a word. Eisenhower reads it once, reads it again. He puts it down. He stands up, walks to the window, stands there for a long time looking out at the Frankfurt skyline, still half rubble from the bombing, cranes and scaffolding rising like metal trees over the ruins. "How many people have seen this?" Eisenhower asks. "You and me," Beetle says, "and Patton, and whoever transmitted it." "How many on the transmission end?" "At minimum 3, possibly more." Eisenhower turns back from the window. His face, according to Smith's later account, is not anger. It is something harder to read than anger. It is a man looking at a problem he cannot solve without breaking something he cares about. Because here is what Eisenhower knows that Patton doesn't fully account for. The telegram is not just a military request, it is a political grenade. If the Soviets learn that a senior American commander formally requested permission to attack them 3 weeks after the end of the war in Europe, the alliance collapses. The United Nations, which is being organized right now in San Francisco at this very moment, collapses with it. The post-war international order, which America has spent 3 years designing, collapses. One telegram, that much damage. And the terrifying part, the part that keeps Eisenhower standing at that window, is that Patton's military analysis is not wrong. Eisenhower knows it. His own intelligence reports say the same things Patton's telegram says. Soviet border violations, systematic persecution of Allied-aligned populations, evidence that Stalin considers the current territorial situation a beginning, not a conclusion. The difference between Patton and Eisenhower is not intelligence, it is what they believe America is willing to do about it. Patton believes America will fight. Eisenhower knows America won't.
The American public has just spent 6 years burying its sons. The factories are retooling for peacetime production. The politicians are already running on "bring the boys home." There's no political universe in which Harry Truman, 30 days into his presidency, still learning how many nuclear weapons America has, authorizes a new war with the Soviet Union. Eisenhower sits back down at his desk. He picks up a pen. He thinks for a long time. Then he writes his response. If this story is hitting different, if you're realizing how close we came to a completely different world, hit the like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm this story deserves to be seen.
The response arrives at Patton's headquarters the next morning. Jensen brings it in. Patton is eating breakfast, black coffee, toast, and egg. He's reading a report about a displaced persons camp outside Munich. He doesn't look up immediately when Jensen comes in. "From Frankfurt?" he asks. "Yes, sir." Patton puts down the report, takes the paper, reads it. He reads it 3 times. Then he sets it on the table, face down, picks up his coffee, drinks it. Jensen is watching him. "Sir, what does it say?" Patton turns the paper over and slides it across the table. Jensen reads it. 2 words. Absolutely not. That's it. No explanation, no diplomatic softening, no "I understand your concerns" or "your assessment has been noted," no citation of political constraints or alliance obligations. Absolutely not. It is the most Patton response Eisenhower could have written, the kind of language Patton himself would use, blunt, final, no room for argument. "What are you going to do, sir?" Jensen asks. Patton is quiet for a moment, long enough that Jensen thinks maybe he didn't hear the question. Then, "What I've always done," Patton says, "my job." He picks up his breakfast report, goes back to the displaced persons camp problem. Jensen stands there for a moment, not sure if he's been dismissed or not. Then he leaves. And in that moment, that ordinary, quiet, unremarkable moment of a general going back to his paperwork, something enormous is decided. Patton will not press the issue. He will not go to the press. He will not write to Congress. He will not give a speech to his men. He will not resign his commission in protest. He will comply, because he is, above everything else, a soldier. And soldiers follow orders, even when they think the orders are wrong, even when they think the orders will cost lives down the road. He will comply, and he will hate every minute of it. But here's the part the telegram story doesn't end with. Here's what happened next, because Patton complies, but he doesn't go quiet. He keeps talking, he keeps giving interviews, he keeps saying in public, in press conferences, in dining halls full of officers and journalists and politicians, "The Soviets are not our allies. They are our next problem. We are making a mistake." Every time he says it, another part of his career breaks off and falls away. September 1945, Eisenhower relieves him as military governor of Bavaria. October 1945, he's reassigned to command the 15th Army, a paper army with no troops, tasked with writing the official history of the war in Europe, a desk job, a quiet place to be forgotten. He goes because a soldier follows orders. November 1945, he writes to Beatrice, "I think my usefulness to my country in this war is over. Perhaps it was always going to end this way." December 8, 1945, he goes pheasant hunting outside Mannheim, Germany. He's shot in the neck in a car accident on the way back. He is paralyzed below the shoulders. He knows immediately he will not survive. "This is a hell of a way to die," he says to the doctor treating him. He is right. December 21, 1945, General George C. Patton dies. He is 60 years old. The cause of death is listed as pulmonary edema and congestive heart failure, complications from the accident. He never made it home to America.
He is buried in Luxembourg at the American Military Cemetery in Ham, at his own request, with the men of his Third Army who had died in the Battle of the Bulge. He had told Beatrice, "I don't want to be buried among the generals. I want to be with my soldiers." He sent one telegram. He got 2 words back, and 13 days later, he was gone. Subscribe right now. This channel exists to tell these stories, the ones that got buried, the ones that textbooks skipped, the ones that actually explain how the world we're living in got made.
Eisenhower's 2 words echoed for the rest of the century. Within 18 months of VE Day, the Cold War had fully begun. The Iron Curtain, a phrase Churchill coined in March 1946, descended across Europe exactly where Patton had predicted it would. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, East Germany, country after country absorbed into the Soviet sphere. The Korean War began 5 years later. American soldiers died fighting Soviet-backed forces. The Vietnam War followed. More American soldiers died fighting Soviet-backed forces. For 45 years, the United States and the Soviet Union circled each other with enough nuclear weapons to end the species. Patton had predicted it. He had predicted it with the precision of a man who understood war not as politics, but as physics, as a problem of force, momentum, and inertia. You stop a thing when you can stop it. You don't wait until it's too large to stop. Was he right? Historians have argued about this question for 80 years. The case for Patton: he correctly identified Soviet expansionist intent. He correctly assessed the temporary nature of American military superiority. He correctly predicted that the territories absorbed in 1945 would remain under Soviet control for decades. Every part of his strategic analysis proved accurate. The case against Patton, an American attack on Soviet forces in 1945, would not have been the clean, fast campaign he imagined. Soviet forces in Eastern Europe numbered in the millions. American supply lines were already being wound down. The atomic bomb existed, but using it on the Soviet Union, a wartime ally, would have been a political and moral catastrophe unlike anything in history. And most critically, the American people, who had just endured 6 years of total war, would not have supported it. Eisenhower knew all of this. That's why his response was 2 words and nothing more. There was nothing more to say. The answer was obvious to everyone except Patton, and perhaps it was obvious to Patton too, and that was the real source of his fury. Not that he believed he could start World War III, but that he believed he was right about everything coming next, and he was powerless to stop it. There is a particular kind of hell reserved for people who see clearly and cannot act. Patton lived in that hell for the last 6 months of his life, and then he left it. Share this video with someone who thinks they know everything about World War II. I guarantee they've never heard this story. One share keeps this channel alive.
In 1974, a retired Army colonel named William Bancroft published a memoir of his time serving under Patton in the Third Army. He had been a young captain in the summer of 1945. He had been present in Patton's headquarters on several occasions when Patton spoke about the Soviets, about the telegram, about what he believed was coming. Bancroft wrote, "I have served under generals who were smarter than Patton. I have served under generals who were more politically sophisticated, more diplomatically skilled, better suited to the complex, ambiguous world that emerged from that war. But I have never served under a general who understood the nature of power as clearly as Patton did. He looked at the world the way a chess player looks at a board, 3 moves ahead, calculating consequences, seeing the end game while everyone else was still celebrating the last move. He was not always right about everything, but he was right about this, and the world he predicted came true, piece by piece, exactly as he said it would. Bancroft paused in his memoir, then added, "What I remember most is not the anger. It is not the arrogance or the drama or the famous temper. What I remember is a man sitting alone in his office very late at night, writing intelligence reports he had no power to act on, writing in a journal that would be locked away for decades. I walked past his office once at 2 in the morning. The light was on. I could see him through the gap in the door, bent over his desk, writing. He looked tired. Not tired the way soldiers get tired the way men get tired when they know something terrible is going to happen and there is nothing they can do to stop it." The journal Bancroft references, Patton's private wartime diary, was partially suppressed by the Patton family after his death. Portions were released in the 1970s. Historians have debated ever since how much was destroyed and how much was simply withheld. What survives confirms Bancroft's account. The last entry in Patton's diary, dated 3 days before the accident, reads, "I have done everything I know how to do. I have said what I believed. I have asked for what I think is right. The answer was no. A soldier obeys, but a soldier also remembers, and history will decide who was correct." History is still deciding, but here is what we know for certain. On a morning in May of 1945, a general picked up a pen and wrote the most dangerous telegram of the 20th century. He addressed it to his closest friend and his commanding officer. He asked one question. He got 2 words back, and those 2 words shaped 50 years of history. Not because they were the right answer, and not because they were the wrong answer, but because they were the only answer anyone in power was willing to give. Patton went to his grave believing it wasn't enough. Eisenhower went to his grave knowing he had no choice, and the Cold War went on for 45 more years. What do you think? Was Patton right? Was Eisenhower right? Was there a third option nobody took? Leave your answer in the comments. The real debate is down there. We read everything. Like this video if Patton's story hit you differently than you expected. Subscribe for the WWII stories they never put in the textbooks. Share this with someone who needs to hear it.